All right, so here is our citation page. You guys can go ahead and you can pause on this slide if you want to, but this just gives you an idea of where we got a lot of our pictures and a lot of our resources. All right, so we are going to start here this first video with just an overview of maps. What are maps? What are they used for? What are the different types of maps that we can use? So you guys, how can we see geography? We understand that the globe is absolutely the most accurate way to represent the Earth's surface. However, we know that it's not functional. It's not practical. You can't put a globe in your pocket and take it to figure out how to get to Walmart or to the mall. And so what really makes sense is obviously this idea of map making. The problem, however, with maps is that although they are a fantastic picture of the Earth's surface, the distribution of our features and the interaction between different things on Earth's surface, it's going to be distorted. And we're going to talk just a little bit later when we talk about map projection or the transferring of this globe, which makes so much more sense, to this map. We're going to talk about the limitations of that here as we go. And then cartography. This is probably one of the most important terms out of this unit, and hopefully one of the easiest. It is just the art of map making. Cartography has absolutely revolutionized since the early days of geography. So what is the early days of geography? We're going to go through a really, really quick history lesson of geography. Our very first geographers used map literally for trade routes and exploration. Without maps, they were lost. And we take that so much for granted today that we understand where we are and how to get somewhere. But before maps and before the understanding of Earth's surface, you didn't have that. You didn't know where you were, and you didn't have a really clear understanding of the Earth either. Aristophanes, he is going to be the father of geography. Aristophanes was the head librarian at Alexandria. He was one of the very first cartographers. He was one of the very first, actually, to compute the Earth's circumference. He believed that the Earth was round when some of the major people in history and in science believed that the Earth was still flat. He is considered to be the father of geography. And this map down here is one of his very first maps of the world. You can obviously see how incredible that map was with how little information he knew at the time. Ptolemy then is later. He is going to be one of the very first publishers of cartography. He actually wrote the Guide to Geography with some of our very first rough maps and land masses. These earlier geographers, you guys, they had incredible accuracy. So some of our very first leaders then as countries, China, Greece, and North Africa. And I think that's obviously distorted and a misconception. A lot of people think that European explorers and Asian explorers were our first, when in fact, China and Greece really led the case, I guess, in trying to understand the world. And then by the 1400s, you had names like you guys probably know: Columbus, Bartholomew, Magellan, Lewis and Clark, some of these major navigators who used geography and use their understanding of the Earth. Geography, you guys, literally stands for writing about the Earth. And then you have George Perkins Marsh, and he comes around and he really led to a new way of thinking about geography. He really connected then anthropology and ecology, trying to understand not just maps as a reference in terms of where to go or how to get somewhere, but using maps to understand the relationship between humans and the Earth in which they live. So here are some different map types.
Okay, the first map type is a reference, and these are designed for people to refer to for general information about places, and they help in locating and navigating to different places. So some different types. We have a political map that shows and labels human-created boundaries, designations, countries, states, cities, capitals, those things.
Which you can see on here: Nebraska, Iowa, etc.
And we have physical maps, and they show and label natural features such as mountains, rivers, and deserts.
Which again, you can see on this map.
And we have a road map, which people don't use very much anymore, but they show and label highways, streets, and alleys. And when they're labeling highways, they'll even tell you how far from one point to the next with the little numbers that are on there. So hopefully some of you have actually seen a road map. Next is a plat map, and these show and label property lines and the details for land ownership. So, for instance, let's say your parents are going to put a fence in. They look at the plat map of your yard, and then they know exactly where to put the lines for the fence. And next, we have locator maps. These are illustrations used in books and advertisements to show specific locations mentioned in the text.
And those are all reference maps. So understanding, again, where things are, boundaries, etc. Then you have thematic maps. And you guys, this is a picture of a thematic map. This is the number of goats in Texas. But this is just one small example of a thematic map. There are tons of different thematic maps. You could have a topographic or an isoline map, which really demonstrates, and you guys can see these two pictures here, which again, topography is trying to understand the idea of the elevation of Earth. And then you have your isoline map right here, which again, the closer together the lines are, the higher the elevation, the further away, the less elevation. So these right here are just two different examples of thematic maps.
Okay, next we have a dot distribution or a dot density, and these are used to show specific location and distribution, that's an important word there, of something across the territory of a map. And each dot or symbol represents a specific quantity. One dot might stand for one school building or the millions of people who own dogs. Any kind of symbols can be used for the dots. And in a dot density map, areas with a lot of dots are high concentration of values. Okay?
So you can see on this map we have the red is going to be Hispanic origin. So you can see the cluster of red down here, and sorry that bar keeps coming up, is going to be a higher concentration or a higher cluster of Hispanic Americans. And so you guys really have to pay attention to your theme in a dot density map to understand. Here's a graduated symbol map, and you can see again, you can either use dots or you can use the car symbol. But in graduated symbol, it's not how many, it's the size. So you guys can see the bigger the circle or the bigger the car, the more of them there are, and the smaller the less. So these are just two different types of thematic maps that are used really often in showing the relationship between features or phenomena and the Earth's surface.
Okay. And then this is a choropleth map, and it uses various colors, shades of one color, or patterns to show the location and distribution of spatial data. It often shows rates or other quantitative data in defined areas, such as the percentage of people in a country who speak English. And we really see these around election time. And you can see what states went Republican and what state went Democrat. And typically that's where we see these the most.
Yep, and the red and blue. And that's something that becomes so common for understanding. This last one is my favorite. As I mentioned, the portfolio direction. This is a cartogram. And a cartogram distorts the size of a country or a state or any unit of land according to some specific useful theme or phenomena. For example, this one is a cartogram of population, and you guys can see the distribution of what the Earth's physical features would look like if they were distorted to fit that theme. Again, these you can look up hundreds of different cartograms to describe what the world would look like if we were looking at hunger rates or if we were looking at the number of hospitals per people, etc., etc. These are the map types that you guys will be responsible for. Again, you've got reference. These are all types of thematic maps and a cartogram.